Okay, great. So Regina, did you get a chance to take a look at this? No. All right. Well, then I think our working session, we can talk about what we want. You have to you have to actually join without audio. Okay. So, all right. The last meeting, I was thinking about what we really want to focus the content on and how much of the history we think we need to go into as background. So, Dick and I have, along with Tabor, been here on the committee the longest, so kind of the longest institutional knowledge. So, how much we think needs to be in there, I guess, may differ a little bit from others who have, shorter tenure. I don't know, but I think it's good to have the shorter tenure perspective too, right? Because that's the audience probably is going to be maybe not knowledgeable at all. So, so this idea, I think we talked about this before, and especially, let's see, you're in the waiting room, Regina?
I don't know what I'm doing. Sorry. That's weird. I think when I disappeared, I came back twice, but.
Oh, okay. So we had this in its organization on the progress being divided into the top 20 recommendations and then these broad categories. So I still think that makes sense because the top 20 is obviously what the plan rose to the top or pulled to the top when it was done. And then the other categories are the required categories. So I still think that kind of structure makes sense. So Regina and Dick, you think so as well?
Yep.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, the crux of it, I think let's go back to the beginning, what you just said, in terms of how we start this. I think we have to have a little description of the master plan and why we have a master plan and what it was intended of doing. And then the segue is why MPIC? And what were we supposed to do? What was our charge? To give people the context of what the remainder is all about. So we're not just a group coming up with these
Right.
areas that we're talking about. This is come up through the master plan.
Right. So I did this introduction section.
Yeah.
Which just gives that background, right?
That's all you need. I mean, I think that sort of gets people in the right direction.
Okay, and then I decided to more recently add these 9 items because it's required in the law to be included in a master plan. So this is kind of gets to what we were talking about before, but and then goes right to the plan itself. So that little bit of background, then what's required to be in a plan, and then going into the plan itself.
Well, should we have something in there telling people who we are and what we're doing?
Yeah, I do have that, and maybe you think it should be moved up. Here's what I have, the implementation.
Should come right after the plan, so, sequentially, we had the plan, we did the plan, and then there was put together a master plan implementation committee. This is what the charge was, and this is what we were supposed to do, and resulting in the types of things that we have been talking about, hitting these areas that were in the legislation.
All right, so this is so we can look and see whether you want to move the implementation. So this is right here, where the cursor is where it leaves off from what's required. Then the plan containing the 3 volumes. And then how there's 3 general themes in the plan. And then seven goals. And then from there, I went to the implementation.
I wanted this in there at the very beginning, because otherwise people won't know, you know, who is this group that's writing this report?
Yeah, so let's see.
What are you supposed to, how do we come together for what we were supposed to do?
So Regina, do you think that these, in terms of the location of this, what's required to be in it, these high level, and then the implementation makes sense? So that's it's at the bottom of the second page where the implementation is.
Yeah, I thought that was fine, but I don't have the historic perspective on it, so
Okay,
I would defer to you, Cheryl.
okay. And then, you know, here it goes into more about the implementation committee itself. And then what we started to do, right? So how we organize, et cetera. And then the high level things that we actually worked in more detail on. So the Milton Landing was the first, and then Milton Village. And so with these, what I did was describe what we did and then where it stands, like in the event that we think there's more that should be followed up on. And I added this on the Milton Landing because there's still concern that the landing hasn't advanced to the level maybe that had hoped in terms of being more inviting to the general public. And we can either elaborate on this or not, you know, and Dick, since you've been involved with this since it was handed over and that to the committee, what do you think? Should we elaborate any further here on this?
That's gonna open up, but the big question here is that one of the things that, since we've been talking about the landing, was who has responsibility for the land. And at one point, we had 4 or 5 different entities. It was 88 Wharf, it was DPW, it was Parks and Rec, it was a tenant, which is the yacht club. And what's happened now is the town pretty much has control of that whole property. And I think based upon our most recent meeting and the meeting we're gonna have next week with residents of 88 Wharf in particular, based upon the past couple of weeks, the incident down there, it really shines a light on the fact that there's no one in control of the land. I mean, I think that what residents have said at the select board meeting is that incidents have been happening down there on a regular basis, which goes to the welcoming safe and the safe part of the whole situation. Now, we don't get in a situation pointing fingers. Hopefully, we will get a harbor master, which will have the town designated responsibility for this, but we don't have it yet, and we've been talking about it for 6 years. Okay, so I think we gotta be a little careful in terms of what we say, so people don't get too defensive as to why things didn't happen.
So what do you think about this, Dick, for the summary and for the italicized is the kind of commentary of where today's commentary in terms of the committee, or it'll be our final reports commentary in terms of the committee?
I think what you have down there is accurate. I mean,
Okay.
every report was issued and the select board for further action. What action has happened?
So should we add anything to that?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what we add without, once again, pointing fingers at people saying that there has been no action.
So we could say that there's been some ownership, which was complicated, right? The kind of ownership of the parcels kind of getting consolidated into town. Some of it was owned by 88 Wharf before, and then there was an easement, right? And there were different leases and more. Yeah.
So there have been opportunities to do things, and for whatever reason, there are probably some very good reasons, nothing has really happened. So I don't want to get too, I don't think I want to get into the.
Okay, so you think that this level of detail is that there's additional effort needed, additional funding?
I think that pretty much says it all. A report was issued. delivered to the select board for further action. The select board has an active committee furthering recommendations. And then the rest of it sort of flows. Hopefully something will happen in the near term to address some of those issues, but right now, nothing is really happening.
What's the name of the committee? I can add that here.
Is the Milton Landing Committee. You know, I mean, there are two other parts of it. There is a part of the, what they're, I guess, going through CPC right now, but as to funding the parkland down at the landing.
Right.
Right? And then, going back almost 3 or 4 years now, conversations that the town has had with the MBTA about securing the air rights for property above the parking area at the MBTA parking lot. That is gonna know.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna make a note about the CPC and Wharf Park. I think I
Yeah,
have it somewhere else,
That's
but
what the show,
yeah.
there has been some movement. For most of what we're talking about down there, besides the fact that we have secured another tenant through an RFP process, which is the Dexter Southfield School, nothing really has truly happened on it.
Okay.
Okay, there was supposed to be work done on the, and you would know this through CPC, there was supposed to be work done on the lockup building.
Right.
Nothing has happened there.
Right.
There was supposed to be work done at the far end of, what's it, Captain's Landing, I think, the far end of the parking lot. Nothing has happened there. We are working on this park, but I think a big part of also is this air rights issue. As to, what we could do with the MBTA.
Does
Okay.
it
That
make,
would sort of bring the whole thing together, so then you have, you know, if we talk to the Hajaz, well, they were the logical developer of this.
Right.
Being the adjacent, the adjacent building, and it's been crickets from the MBTA in terms of doing something. And we talked to Richard Wells, who's the chairman, just recently about this. I said, this is the perfect time, since this MBTA communities seems to be mobile, there seems to be efforts to build, have opportunities to develop property and housing next to the trolley line. That would be the logical place to put it, right? Just, I don't know, you know, you do it with Quincy, you do it with Revere, you do it another place, but for some reason the T doesn't want to move on this. Now, why? No. That's a call for the
Select board.
select board. So I guess it's, you know, once again, goes back to a report is issued, delivered to the select board for further action.
Okay.
That's why I have to say.
All right.
People could say, what's happened? That's the select board.
And I think putting the committee here at least refers people to where to look for more
Yeah.
follow-up, right?
Yeah.
And we're noting more work needs to be done. Regina, did you have a comment about that?
I did, and I missed a little bit of what Dick was saying, so if it's redundant, I apologize.
You want to come over here so Regina can hear you better?
Was there any issue in terms of funding related to the loss of loss of funding and funding opportunities?
There
As
was
a
that
result-
grant, there was the seawall grant that was pulled.
Does it make sense? Does it make sense to include that as a single sentence in this?
You know, I'm wondering whether, you know, Megan, actually, I think it was relative to probate, she was probate, never mind. You know, I guess, we hadn't necessarily talked about whether we should include anything related to MBTA communities, the grant issue. You know, it's like one of these things where there's so many things that's happened in 10 years. You know, what are the things that we want to highlight? I mean, we're compliant now, right? And
Yeah.
applying for grants.
Yeah. But that potentially delayed things, right?
Yeah, okay.
That's the only
All right,
That's the only thing that I thought might be worth noting, that um, our funding was disrupted, or we were, how would you word that? That we were prevented from pursuing additional funding?
well, the grant was actually,
pulled.
rescinded, I guess, is the right
Yeah,
word?
that was the one, but we also couldn't apply for any others, right?
Right,
Now, is there any guarantee now that we hopefully will be compliant, that money will become available?
so I don't know where we stand with being able to apply for that kind of a grant again. See what-
But we lost that one, like that
That
funding.
particular one, but they
Yeah,
do have other grant cycles, I think.
Right. But,
Yeah, yeah.
but I thought Dick
Um,
was asking if that money is now going to head to us, and I think the answer to that would be no.
That particular one will not come back.
Right,
Whether
right,
we
right.
can get a different one through a different cycle, I think.
Yeah, and the only, I'm just thinking about this, the other piece of this is the whole EPA cleanup of
right,
the
okay.
Neponset on both sides of the Baker Bridge.
Okay,
And, who would pay for that?
but my understanding is it doesn't go beyond the dam. Is that right?
Well, I think that what they're trying to make a case that if the pollutants are up to the dam, and we could show that there are now pollutants past the dam, could you make a case that, the pollutants just don't stop at the dam? And I think that's the point where someone is going to have to take control and make that case to the EPA. Because dredging that section from past the dam out to the Neponset, through the Neponset River out to the harbor is key to the viability of that whole landing.
Yeah, the dredging is, yeah.
If you don't dredge it, at some point, maybe not in the foreseeable future, there'll be no water.
The sediment has collected there, Regina, and there has been dredging done there before, but it's been quite some time. And I think there was this question of how the interface with the EPA Superfund site cleanup. I think Richard Wells had hoped that this area could be added to the project. And so it doesn't hurt to reference it. I think we can also look at whether this is the right place to put it, because the landing comes up later in the report as well. And I would just scrolling over to see what I had over on the side here, which is, should these initiatives move later in the report? But I put them here to highlight what the committee did, part of not just kind of organizing and reaching out, but actually took a lead. And I thought it was important to kind of get that in the front, that we took a lead.
Yeah, I mean, our job was done once we submitted the report to the select board.
Is it just those two, Cheryl?
No, I'll keep going here. So.
Got it. Okay.
All right, the Milton Village, the zoning but it has been in place for 5 years. And some properties have changed ownership, but no projects have come in under this zoning to the planning board.
Right.
And so it does make me wonder whether there's an economic feasibility study required for the MBTA community zoning, since we're desiring to have an affordability requirement that's greater than 10%. So we had asked that, planning board asked that this be considered in that study, and also whether it would be a separate analysis, sort of an add-on analysis, to see whether there's anything in this zoning that should be changed, if there's anything uneconomical about it. That's the reason why we're not getting projects. So I noted that here.
Well, I think that's important. I mean, we spent a lot of time on that,
Exactly,
and that,
yeah.
and it didn't result in what we had hoped over the near term. Now, going back to what you said there, I think it's perfect. I think that's something that should be looked at again.
Okay.
and say, why hasn't anything really happened down there?
Another why not happening, right?
Why hasn't something happened?
Okay. All right, so that's that one. Then the bicycle pedestrian master plan, which the committee provided funding for, matching grant funding for with MAPC. And again, that was delivered to the select board. And I just also think it's important to highlight that, funding is required to implement it. And now grant opportunities may be available for it, which I think there are. In fact, even there's an application to the CPC related to that. So then we did the town center planning. So that started with reviewing the fire station expansion project to make sure that they were considering any potential impacts on other uses and future uses. We did that with MAPC. That's where the crosswalk came from. And so I put that here, and the connection to the Council on Aging. And then I added that there were other suggestions that didn't get analyzed in that, right? And library parking solutions could be combined with that effort. All okay so far, Regina, good? Okay, then the library parking, how we assisted with that, and some of the due diligence items here I listed. And then how the idea of co-locating it as an opportunity. Actually, not sure I really specified why co-locating it, which really has to do with financial as much as possibility of another use.
Do you want to include, Cheryl, that the shell plans were actually put together by you?
Okay,
Like, would this be the place to include
I
that?
think I have more discussion on it later. We can look at it.
No, that's fine. I think another really nice thing to do here would be to add, for each of these, add a parenthetical reference to where additional information can be found later in the report.
Okay, yeah. Okay, let me go back to.
And you can just put if you just put a note there that says add parent, that I can certainly do that when we have the final version. And I think if I do an index for the final version, we can even just pull those references from there.
And then I added this where we provided funding and some guidance, but we didn't really take the lead. So this is on the 7 Brush Hill Road and the Pagoda Circle. I made a note here. Javier said that they can come to our September meeting.
Good.
So this will be wrapped up before we wrap up the report, which is great. So we'll add that at the very end. And then the town-wide shuttle, I haven't added anything since our last meeting. I just noted it here before in case it was going forward. Deborah Milbauer did email me today. She has the 2 students, and she asked me if we would like for them to come to our next meeting, which is August 4th. And I said that would be great. So I can fill this part into a bit here.
Just as I just heard this today, someone had brought it up to me that they thought that because Milton was one of the core communities of the MBTA and has bus service throughout town, we would be prohibited from having a town-wide shuttle.
Really?
Yes. So might want to check with Milano on that.
Okay. Well, he was in I told you I had that meeting with
I know,
Deborah
I
and
know,
and
I
he.
know.
Okay, so we should ask him.
Ask him directly if
Hmm.
there's any problems with the town providing a shuttle being part of one of the core communities.
Okay, so it's because it's one of the core initial MBTA communities.
Hmm.
Okay,
If you look at some of the other communities that that the students would be looking at, none of them would be considered to be core.
mhm,
And they could provide regional transit authorities, of which the shuttles would fall under that umbrella. Right?
yeah, well, that would be ridiculous because they're not providing additional service to us. In terms of the buses.
That's not,
All right, well, I made a note to ask about that.
that's Milana directly about that, to check with the T to make sure
Okay.
that there's no issues with the T of us providing an in-town shuttle.
Right. We provide, all right, Council on Aging provides rides, but I guess that's different.
Yep.
All right, then it goes to the top 20 recommendations in the plan. So I just actually list what those are and then a commentary on it. So for the first one, it was creating a vision for each commercial district by passing a mixed-use overlay and by developing a traffic and parking management plan for each district. So, there was mixed-use overlay for the 2 primary business districts that was passed. And there were studies done for traffic and parking management. Again, it's a question of implementation of those. I said here, there were specific recommendations, but I haven't commented on whether they've been implemented or not. So I don't know if you wanted to add anything further to those relative to, this is the top recommendation. And this is our report on what's happened with the top.
No, I don't think we need to, because I think as long as people understand that our job is to, by our charge, is to make recommendations to the select board. What they do is really up to the select board to do.
Yeah.
You know, we've identified these as issues. No, we didn't identify. These issues have been identified to us as issues to the general population. We have studied these, we have made recommendations, and that's all we can do.
Okay,
Right.
so do you think that this is sufficient?
I think that's
discussion?
sufficient. I
Okay.
mean, I think this is one of these things that is really gonna be a wake-up moment for the select board to say, if we do another master plan. That, you know, if you're going to do it and ask people to spend the time doing these types of things and recommendations are made to you, you have to take some sort of action one way or another on something like this, right? And there's too many of these as we go through it, and that's why I'm a little sensitive to what we say in this, so we don't just point fingers at the select board, because it has changed. At them saying, hey, you've had some recommendations for people and you've decided for one reason or another not to do anything with them. So why would people want to participate in another master plan? You know, the master plan we did before, we made recommendations, and here are the things we could do. We have so many things that haven't been touched.
Right, so I just say that these have been done with recommendations.
That's
and
all we have to say. We've made recommendations, and we think it's a good idea, but if you don't, move on.
I agree with that. That's great.
Okay, then the second one is of the top 20, addressing non-conforming uses and dimensions. There hasn't been progress on this. This is squarely in the planning board's court. So there has been a little bit of progress, I should say, the second sentence here. But again, I think it's fairly consistent so far with the, not really trying to also, you mentioned the select board, not really also putting the planning board in the hot seat either, right? So this says some progress, but not a lot on that recommendation. That seems.
Unfortunately, what it shows consistently is that people have identified issues. We have studied those issues, we made recommendations, and nothing has happened. Right?
Yeah, you know, it's, I don't think this one even is on the list. It might be on a list of planning board articles, zoning articles to address, but if it's not, I'll make sure that this gets put on the list. Then provide small scale commercial uses in the neighborhoods by grandfathering existing non-conforming commercial uses and encouraging the creation of additional ones. There's not been progress on this
Right.
at all. In my tenure on the board, there was an effort that didn't advance. But I still would like to see this happen. So, you know, keeping it here and bringing it back to the planning board is a good thing. Dick, here we go. Address parking issues in the, oh, before I move on, Regina, were you good with the?
Yep, I'm
okay.
good.
Okay. And then on the parking issues, it's pretty simple. Plans prepared, recommendations need to be implemented, right?
No, we had, I was part of an effort put together by Mike Soulis at the time to put together a comprehensive parking strategy, traffic management strategy for East Milton Square that was, I think, voted on by the select board at the time, but never implemented. So we were going to have DPW, police, landlords, tenants, you know, adjacent neighbors, all at the in our planning people, which is economic development, as well as an enforcement police department, all there in the same room to talk about these issues, and it never happened. And this was 4 years ago. So, you know, you've heard me say this before, these are issues, they're not gonna solve themselves. Parking in East Milton Square is a mess. Parking in Central Avenue is just going to get worse. It's gonna be interesting what happens with the new market opening up down on on Adam Street or Elliott Street. You know, my daughter lives in the Walter Baker factory, and she said, "Dad, where are all the people gonna park? We're gonna use this." I said, "I have no idea."
Well, you know, there's the parking on Elliott Street when it's not prime time for
The gym,
Steel and Rye in the gym, yeah.
yeah, in the gym, and he's gonna he wants to put a group hub in there too, right?
Yeah, that'll add a lot more at the same time
Yeah,
period.
that side, and then you have the people on the other side, right?
Well, you know, I come back to what I said, I think in prior meetings, is the way some communities have handled it is to have municipal parking that businesses share, right? And
Where you wanna put it?
that's well, you know, that is the question, right?
Yeah, but
$1 million
the way
question.
I understand from Dan Kerrigan, this is, you know, one of these businesses that you're gonna be going in, popping out of, so you're not gonna be there long, but you are going to have to park there to use it. And do we get a situation where everybody starts double parking? Right? And that usually doesn't end well. So I think that's one of the things that someone, whether it be the police or the planning department or all of the above, DPW, all sit down and sort of try to figure this thing out, which I think is a good test case, is this is a good reuse of a building. It's needed, it's gonna be well done. It's just a question of, will it be too good for the space that it's in?
Yeah, just on that topic, I mean, why do we need a right turn lane there? Why can't that be short-term parking for the
Tell me,
business?
you can tell me that, I have no idea, but
It
that's,
doesn't seem like it's necessary to have a right turn lane.
no, that's, talk to
There's a traffic light. People could just wait for the light to turn right.
one of the recommendations in the, Regina, I don't know if you knew, I was on the traffic mitigation committee, and we put together a report, and one of the recommendations we had that wasn't implemented was that to turn the charge of the traffic commission to more of a proactive committee versus what they do right now is being very reactive. So in other words, if you don't call them with an issue, there's no issue. So we were trying to get them to be on things like this, for them to sit down and come up with a holistic approach to these types of issues. That has not happened.
Would
And-
that have to involve one of them being, attending planning or zoning meetings so that they can have all that information at the ready, or, sort of keep an eye on trends and other things, or what, how might that work? And I don't want to get into the weeds,
Well,
but
I think if you're
curious.
proactive, what you do is you would sit down with the planning board, you would sit down with the planning department, you would sit down with other pieces and say, there are issues here. How do you want to best deal with them? Before they become the real issue, like today, if we were talking about this new project down in Milton Village, you would have the discussion. Cheryl could bring up saying, why do we have this right turn lane? Why couldn't that be short-term parking? Great idea, but it's not going to go anywhere because the traffic commission is the logical group to make that recommendation to the select board. But unless it comes to them, how does it get to them for them to take a look at it? And we don't have a traffic engineer either on staff or as a consultant, even though the monies at one point were designated, I think it was $80,000 for that position. So we have, Cheryl and I were talking earlier, we have a $40,000 piece of software that
Right, the GIS stuff, yeah.
that they say hasn't been used, they don't have anybody who knows how to use it.
Oh, so that goes back to, should we put in here that we funded that right here, Dick?
Yeah,
Yeah, right? Because we didn't really like work on it, but we funded it, right?
fun.
I'll just put this here for the time being and then I'll fill that in.
Yeah.
Or you can help
But see,
fill it in.
that, once again, everything sort of is pointing back to, we've done our job, as best, I think we did a pretty good job doing our job, making recommendations, but the problem is, we're not getting this quote implementation after our recommendations. So you run the risk of saying, we're gonna do another one of these at some point. How are you gonna get people to participate if they're saying, gee, this thing is really a waste of time unless the select board wants to deal with it? So I gotta be, trying to be sensitive to the select board and the planning board too, to a degree on some of these issues, but as you read through this stuff, it's good recommendations with no follow through.
So maybe our conclusion would be that
It could be.
some of our, is that there's been a lot of good work done and a lot of follow-up that still needs to happen, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. Now, you're gonna get the classic finger pointing and, it wasn't me, it was so-and-so. You don't have a planning director, we don't have an assistant planning director, and, which ties into the whole, if you remember, the planning department is supposed to be, also has responsibility for economic development,
Right.
right? Which sort of gets lost in the weeds as
And
we
there's-
have this conversation.
And they received an economic development grant and a consultant engaged, but it's stalled out, and so until we get the department staffed up, it is a challenge. I think we're gonna see that as a consistent theme, I guess, right? Consistent
Yeah.
theme.
Yeah, and I think that this, once again, not to give ourselves cover, we've done what we've been charged to do to a point. It hasn't been always fun, always hasn't been easy, but we have come up with recommendations, which is part of our charge, as I read the charge
Right.
of our committee, but it goes nowhere. Maybe it isn't, it should be a strong town administrator, is a town manager the person who has that responsibility.
Yeah, so one of the things, we also were charged with was like making recommendation for what funding would be required. And I don't know that we're capable to do some of that, but I do think like if there's funding that's required for these things, then it does seem like the town departments under the town administrator should identify what the cost is. So it can be either, someone can say there's grant money available for it,
Or that's too much.
or it's too much and we can't do it, or
Right.
we can plan that out for, on a 10-year capital plan, or, just something to show that,
Well-
rather than it just being dismissed because the money is tight,
Well,
right?
okay, we all are in businesses, we all do things, and, you get in these situations, at some point you have to make a decision. And it's either yes, no, or not now.
Mm-hmm.
But people expect a decision to be made. If it's not now, when? And it could be, we can't do it now because we don't have the money. We want to do the library parking.
Mm-hmm.
Good idea, spent a lot of time on it. We had a lot of good input from people, but it really came down to the nuts and bolts of, does the town want to fund additional positions at the library? And they did not, and it didn't go anywhere. Right?
I'm not sure that that's the way I heard it, but.
Yeah, I didn't get that either, that
Well, they didn't fund the positions, right?
But they still can do,
additional programming with the
Mhm.
current
right,
staff.
they're still not able to meet some of the demand, even though they have staff to do it. Some of what they've asked for, you're correct, for staffing has been an ongoing, yes, what's the committee, the personnel board?
Right,
That
the-
agrees to it.
Like, yes, we
It's not
want it, but
funding.
we're not funding it,
They
yeah.
signed off on it, and once again, it hasn't, the funding hasn't happened, and when the personnel board signed off on it, it wasn't like 6 months ago.
Right,
It
this
was
was
a
years
few years
ago,
ago.
yeah.
They thought it was a good idea, and the funding wasn't there, and even with the override, there was no funding for additional.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
because
I think
supposed to
even
those are-
without those additional staff members, I think Will made it pretty clear that they had additional capacity to do more programming with the current staff that they
Right.
have, and that the issue is they can't because
But
of
it didn't
a
get,
lack
it didn't get any traction.
of parking. Say it again.
It didn't get any traction.
The parking aspect.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know if did we present the final idea to anyone yet?
The library trustees, wanted to take the lead on the next steps with it.
Got it.
So, they, Chris and Will asked me to participate in a meeting, with Nick and with the chair of the select board, just to bring them up to speed on where it was. And then, they requested a meeting with the select board to bring them up to speed with where it is. And then we'll see what next steps are there.
Great, thank you.
So, and there was talk maybe of a very small kind of committee that would help the library with their next steps, but that was something that was discussed at that, small meeting. All right, so on the parking again, I didn't mention library parking here because we discussed that already. And then, on the inclusionary zoning, this is the recommendation was something that's like on a town-wide basis, which some towns have. I'm not sure that that's how that really applies in Milton at the same level, since so much is zoned single family, but inclusionary zoning has definitely been included in all of the other overlay zoning. So that means, a certain percentage of the units have to be affordable. So in our mixed use overlay districts in Milton Village and East Milton, there's a requirement. In the cluster zoning, there's a requirement. And we could put here now in the MBTA communities, we can add MBTA communities here.
Mhm.
Where's my add comment? this economic study is going to determine what percentage affordable we can require and still, and not sort of kill development, if you will.
For the project.
Yeah, so I'll add something there for that. And then in terms of this downsizing, the ADUs are, meant to be addressing that. And then on preserving the historic characteristics, there's really only a couple of things it can do, within the regulations that exist. So the demolition delay bylaw was modified to extend it, and then the local historic district study committee was formed, and they're still working on getting a district. So that's in progress. So that's where that stands. Then the new development in keeping with the town's character by creating design guidelines, those were developed for both of the overlay districts. And I can also, again, add that MBTA communities or in our site plan approval bylaw that was passed, there's design guidelines.
Okay, is there a reason why we don't have a design review board established?
It's never been discussed, as far as I know.
Okay, so let's back it up then. We have a design review something.
We have a design review. I mean, we can make a note that we have that. It's been there for a long time.
Guidelines have been prepared, but we don't have a board
So
to review the design.
well, the planning board does.
You do.
Yeah.
So do we want us, then why do we need a design review board has not been established? The planning
Well, it
board.
was just that it was here by creating and establishing a design review board. I can just put here that the planning
The
board,
planning board has responsibility
Yeah.
for, you know.
some towns, and like Natick, where my office has done work, they do have this design review, and it's advisory to the planning board. So it's composed of design professionals, and then, assuming that, like the review body, the permit granting authority, which would be, let's say, the planning board, in this case, they may or may not have design professionals on them.
Right.
So that's the idea about having a design review board. All right, then the Great Estates bylaw, to encourage large historic homes and lovely landscapes. I mean, the Carberry property was obviously a top of mind in that time period, which that zoning did get put forward, and that's what allowed Wolcott Woods to be built. But it doesn't apply to too many properties because it's very specific in it.
Well, right, I mean, going back to when Whiteside was involved doing the Burr estate, I mean, it was the
Right.
craziest thing. You needed 1 acre for every unit plus 2 acres. So you have a piece of property, they have like, 25 units with 27 acres of land. But you had other pieces of property, a big house and a small lot. I'm thinking of the one in particular on, I think, Blue Hill Avenue, which is going to be developed as a 40B.
yeah.
If that had been an option to turn that into condominiums, not to say that we don't need affordable housing, but I think there would be a better use for that piece of property as
Right, so the issue is we do have a condo conversion bylaw, but it has to be the house has to be on 10 acres. So it's just too big.
It's too big.
And I've talked about this with the planning board. I think there is some interest in that, dropping that down. To your point, like even dropping it to 3 acres would have helped, with some of the 40B on Blue Hill Ave is 11,000 square foot home on I think it's less than 5 acres.
Right.
And so you would need to get that dropped down. And, so I do think there's still risk of some of the properties in Milton. We're getting closer on meeting 10% affordability,
But
but
even if we were over 10%, I think the idea is there is good opportunities for homes,
yeah,
providing additional housing opportunities. In big houses that some people just may not need a 15-room house, right? I mean, it's,
so what do we think about what I wrote here? Should I revise this in any way here?
was it withdrawn and then referred to study, or was it defeated at the town meeting?
It was referred for further study that hasn't happened.
Well, that way, we would recommend that maybe it be revisited and
Okay,
working with the planning board to come up with a,
alright, I'm just gonna, I won't do the actual, just put here. New comment.
I think after, from consideration at the town meeting and referred for further study, and then you get going, you know. Because it looks like the way I'm reading it right now, it was withdrawn for consideration. Does that mean it's dead, or what happened to it? And I think what we're saying is it was referred.
Actually, I think what happened was it didn't even make it to town meeting. It was, it was pulled. It was submitted, then it was pulled. And I think
Who would pull that?
some members of the planning board taking a
Planning
different
board.
vote. At town meeting. So I think it was not referred back, but the planning board pulled it back itself at town meeting. And that's the way this is written. And I probably went back and checked meeting minutes or something, but I could double check that.
Yeah, I think I think it's certainly worthy of, it's easy for me to say of not being on the planning board, but I think it's certainly worthy of discussion and consideration by the planning board, given some of the actions on these 40Bs.
Is this referring to the estates like the one next to Delphi?
Yeah,
Got it. Okay.
so that you could take a large home, 11,000 square feet. I mean, some people may want that size home, but most people don't live in 11,000 square foot home.
No, I mean, especially in a, you know, if you go to Brookline, go to Newton, you see this, you know, all the time where people are taking a home and cutting it up into 3 or 4 units. And for all sorts of reasons, but you know, I think a lot of it is you just don't need, a lot of people, if they're gonna build a house that big, usually they want a new house.
So the, you know, even, I think it's a better way to think that you're gonna preserve it, which was the whole idea, you know, is the conservation, is that you can allow more options for a large historic home. So I think I'll add something about that, and then,
Yeah, I mean, it adds housing, additional viable housing opportunities for people that we talk about. We're talking about young kids moving back and building, young families, people downsizing, you know, all along those lines. That, you know, 1,000 square feet is probably plenty for them at the time. I was thinking of my first condominium was in Charlestown. It was in the first condominium building in Charlestown, and it was a single family home carved into 6 condominiums. You know, when we bought it, it was, you know, I was 30 years old. So, I mean,
right, gives you an opportunity to buy,
well, exactly.
but
you
you
know,
don't have many options in Milton
no,
now.
and I think that's one of the
Right.
things, and I think not to take nothing away from these new apartments that will be coming online. People might want a little bit more character in the building. You know, you certainly keep the outside, and a good architect like Cheryl, you know, good interior architects can take a look at the stuff and say, we're not gonna rip the whole thing down to the studs, and when we leave up the molding and the wood and things like that, and it's a nice unit.
Right,
I don't know. To me, it makes better sense. And I think, I've been critical of the way it was done in the past, the size required for this, for condominiums. Just didn't make any sense to me. And, the amount of land, it's like, what do I need 10 acres for?
right. I mean, a lot of it was zoning put in place that was really targeted for one particular piece of property, but it couldn't be written for one. So it was made to sound like it was open, but when you really get down to it, there's not many that apply.
No, let's be honest, there were people that didn't want condominiums
Right.
in Milton, so they made it very, very difficult for developers
Yeah.
to develop a piece of property.
That's true. All right, so I'm gonna make a note of that. Then, developing a conservation strategy for preserving open space that includes updating the open space and recreation plan. Well, that's been underway for a bit too, kind of stalled out again, just like the economic development. But there is a committee and they have a consultant, they were funded. And, hopefully it'll get back on track. And then the Parks and Rec applied for CPC funding for a recreational master plan, which they have their first public meeting next week.
Good.
So that, I just pulled from what they had, their application for that here. And then also another CPC, a couple of CPC funded projects, the Conservation Commission Estuary Project, which are you familiar with that? So there's property, you know where you're going to get on the highway off of Granite Ave, and then there's that small residential neighborhood there. Between that and the water is town-owned, basically estuary marshland. And there is also what was a rail line that was connecting to Quincy to get granite down to the waterfront and then over to build the Bunker Hill Monument and other things. So there's first it's mapping, survey, and then eventually it'll be, they want to improve walking paths and access, but preserve the estuary.
Mhm.
So that's that one again, I pulled from their application since I have those. And then the Pine Tree Brook study, again, that was about the ecosystem there. And then so that, yeah, okay. So there's been a lot of action through the CPC funds on this one, really, which is great. I don't know if I mentioned that here. Should I mention that these are CPC funded projects?
I don't think there's any harm.
Yeah, okay, I'll just put a note there for that also.
You could even make it an asterisk type footnote type thing.
Okay,
After the title of each of the projects.
okay. And then the Gateway Sign Program, there are some signs at gateway locations. I don't think there's really been a lot of additional action on this. I don't know that we want to add anything here.
Is the Purple Heart community, are those just the small plaques that say we have Purple Heart? I don't know what you call them. They're not really honorees, like Purple Heart honorees in our community. That has nothing to do with the banners that are around town with military
Correct,
personnel on it. Okay.
So when you enter, I think.
A major
Milton,
thoroughfare.
Yeah. There is other additional signage, I think, like in Milton Village about entering Milton, but I don't think is comparable signage, let's say at the Parkway, coming from Mattapan, or, you know, coming from Canton, or
Truman
Truman Parkway,
Quincy, or,
Truman
yeah,
Parkway.
Truman
yeah.
Parkway, any of those other places.
into Milton, it should be, you know,
I don't
So
even
there's-
know. Is there one? Oh, you were saying, no, you said the Parkway, but what about Blue Hill Ave? I know it says entering Milton, but I don't think it has anything else on it, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it's just more highway or not road, you know, kind of typical road signs that say Milton,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
like Gateway.
And is our town responsible for that, even if it's on a state road?
I think that this kind of signage was meant to be
Wherever the major
welcoming,
thoroughfares are.
yeah, well, kind of historic maybe, or something to provide kind of Milton's character, identifying that you've entered Milton. I don't remember exactly how that came about, that recommendation.
Mhm.
That it's actually in one of the top 20 is interesting, because it doesn't seem like it's the same level of initiative.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. But it is actually, it's such low hanging fruit. I'm surprised that,
Yeah, yeah.
but who would be responsible for
Guess somebody would have to raise.
funding it, and DPW, I would guess, right? Putting up the signs. I
Mhm.
guess the question becomes, who funds it?
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure what commentary to add on this. So I'll pass it by for now if there's anything else. Maybe we can look back in the plan itself and see if there was something. Launching a healthy Milton initiative, focusing on health and wellness. You know, I think the health department, you know, doing the community health assessment and now working on the next phase of that is a good I guess story related to this.
Yeah, they also did that big workshop. I wish I could remember when it was. I want to say it was like November or something, maybe later, that they had everyone meet. We were in the Council of Aging, and they
right.
had like 120 people or more, broken down into 3 working groups. That was a really, really well run and
Okay.
well attended meeting.
So,
But I would have to go back and look at what the name was. Let me see if I can do
all right. And then the Partnership for a Healthy Milton. Again, they have their volunteers, but
that.
they're active, and they developed this, their own plan, strategic plan, and they're, as we know, transportation, you know, the transportation is part of that. So I think
Mhm.
that ties in well there, and I don't know of any others that tie to this.
Oh, what about the opioid settlement?
Okay,
I don't know what that's through. I think it was with the Department of Health. Um, but I know they conducted a survey to find out what constituents wanted to see, like what were the most desirable places to apply the opioid settlement funds. I don't know what came out of that yet, but
so then next is the making biking and walking safer and more pleasant. So there's safe routes to school grant funding, so some projects have been done with that funding, the complete streets policy, the bicycle pedestrian master plan, and the note that additional funding is required for significant progress, right? And then increasing access to the Neponset River. So this was where that first initiative that the committee worked on was related to this because we were asked to get involved with this. So I don't know if you want to say anything differently than this. This is something I had put together before Dexter and so forth in terms of this particular response to number 13.
Could this be combined in any way with the, oh no, the Milton Landing thing was different. That was in a different category. That wasn't in the top 20.
Well, the Milton Landing I had pulled out as something that the committee
Right.
worked on. So this is,
Right.
can refer to this.
Mm,
In some ways, if we add more to this, right? Because this is not a lot of detail here either. Or what we could say, we could just say that back in those initiatives that first one is related to number 13 of the top 20 recommendations, right?
Mhm.
Right, so we go back here and we say this one. It's what you were saying, Regina, about adding the reference, right? So we can think about whether we want any additional information
absolutely.
in these top 20s, but that's where it falls. It might fall somewhere else later too. Then number 14, the more wholesome activities for teenagers. The Wildcat Den, and the task force, the youth task force. I don't know if there's other things that need to be added to this. Are you aware of any, Regina?
There was a discussion, I don't remember where it ended, of using the old fire station side, like the upper floors or something, for a teen center. But I feel like Margaret Carroll said that was no longer being considered, or was being considered somewhere else. My memory is not serving me well for that, sorry.
Margaret left her position, right? Is there somebody? I can just reach out to the chair of this committee.
I think Kiki's also on that committee too.
Yeah. How about you, Regina? Do you want to reach out to Kiki or something?
Sure, I'll do that right now.
I'll put this for you. All right. Well, it's interesting. I went to the Council on Aging, this number 15, since to hear about Medicare, given my birthday arriving in October and turning 65. But I spoke to Christine Stanton, the director of the COA, and she said since she's taken over, the amount of programming that they're doing is really, and the participation is really expanded.
Yeah.
So, and so this, I could add a little bit here. I can ask her if she wants to add anything. All right, then the Civic Center. So this ties back. So I'm going to go back here. No, it's number 16. It ties back to this. This just goes into a little more detail than what
Yeah.
was on the other part of it.
Mhm.
Focus a little bit more on the parking analysis. Well, it's done now. So I think we could say here. Something, I mean, sorry if I. Considering completion.
Cheryl, I would also add to that the idea of having that building between the police station and town center, right?
Yeah. Which building though?
The one we talked about, the parking lot and multi-use
Okay,
building. I would say add for number 17 after a 2-year delay in meeting the standard of compliance with the MBTA Communities Act. The town, are we now compliant as of July 14th?
well, we have like, interim compliance until they confirm that the zoning meets all the regs.
Got it, okay.
Right, and I mean, do we have to highlight the delay? Can we just say that the town has?
I think it's an important one if we're talking about why we don't have more progress on this particular top recommendation, right? Like this is this was a multi-year break in our ability to apply for funding.
I would just say, we.
And it's not a judgment, it's just
Therefore, we
it's just
weren't eligible, right?
including.
That's,
Yeah, that's it. It's not a judgment. It is just reporting the fact that that's one of the reasons why over the past 10 years, more progress was not done, or more progress was not made, and that we lost that funding too. So we sort of lost the ability to talk about what had been done, right?
all right,
And
so
this
I'm
was
putting these,
specifically just the discretionary ones, right?
so I'm putting these notes on the side, but anybody
No, I
can
get it.
write, in the document.
Mhm.
And, if there's something that's written that you think should be rewritten and you don't want it to like lose what's there, just put it in a note on the side or
Yeah.
put it underneath for like an alternate way to say something, then we can talk about it.
Yeah.
All right, and then, the next on an institutional and or overlay, healthcare overlay district, that
Mhm.
hasn't been done, which,
I'm guessing that's on the planning board as well.
yes, and you can see here, I noted the expansion of bid, Milton. They go to the ZBA, doesn't come to the planning board at all because there's no zoning for that use. And so, their medical office, I understand, some of it is in rented space in Quincy or other towns, and we miss out on that tax revenue that we could get, where, you know, Milton itself is not taxed, of course, but the medical office space can be.
Right.
I do think that, I mean, I put this in here because it does seem like it should get some consideration, if you all agree.
Mhm.
And then number 19, maintaining municipal buildings,
Before we move to that, Cheryl, can I just
Yeah.
interrupt for 1 second? The top 20 list, is it a prioritized list or are these
No.
just the, okay.
They
Would
said
it-
specifically it was not prioritized. I don't know if
Got
I
it.
put in.
That's fine. Would it be helpful to somehow include a little note that gives the reader an idea of what boards this would fall under?
Yeah, it's in the plan itself, but yeah, we can put that in there,
Like even if, I don't know, sometimes, you know how you read a menu item and it'll have like
you know,
VG, V for vegan and vegetarian, like where we
Yeah.
just have those little, like I can even make it into icons or something.
yeah, you know, so we just need to go back and, you know, see how these, I think then, you know, when we get to the document, the plan itself, there's the parties are assigned, or the.
Yeah, yep, I remember that
I
in the,
think
even in the
that's pretty-
spreadsheet, yeah.
Yeah. Let me see here. But it's not the top 20, it's by goals.
Right. So
7.
but
So
we can
we'll
look
have
those
to
up.
go through
Yeah.
and find where it is, Regina. It's
Yeah,
not-
yeah.
Not as straightforward as that, setting up the goals. All right,
Yeah.
but, I'll do somewhere at the top here. Right. All right, so I mean, the municipal buildings, I think we could add here. The capital improvement committee gets. I don't know, how many millions of dollars in requests more than what they have funding
All
for?
right.
Should we add that here?
Well,
But we also have high bond rating. Dick, and I don't know if that's related to not taking on too much debt. Dick, do you want to reach out to the chair?
sure,
I don't
Yeah.
remember who's the chair now, but,
we'll find out.
okay.
Yes.
I think it's it's because that ties back to the taxes, you know, like if you're looking at an overlay zoning or business zoning. or-
Absolutely.
Right?
Well,
Absolutely.
one of the things you always try to look at when you're doing these types of things is if you're gonna build something. You also have to take a look at how you're going to maintain it
Yeah,
for upkeep. So that's always a wild card in a lot of these discussions. As to if you build the building, I mean, we're dealing with a lockup, for example, down at,
the landing.
down in Milton Landing, which is a town-owned building that's falling apart. Okay, and talking to Tom McCarthy, who was taken over for, I guess, that responsibility for the town. He wasn't even sure that the town had ownership of that building.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so
Yeah.
now we're in a situation where, you're saying to someone, I use the foot that building as an example, saying, hey, you should do something to that building, then someone could say, well, yeah, that's great, but here's a building that you own, why aren't you taking care of it, right?
Mm, yeah.
So that is a funding issue, which I think a part of it is gonna be taken care of through CPC. But it's, and it doesn't get any less expensive by pushing it off. And
Right.
then again, it doesn't get handled by itself, so,
That's an historic preservation
exactly.
project too, and previously, the lease with the yacht club required the yacht club to maintain the building, but they didn't require them to maintain it in any kind of under any historic, guidelines or specifications, so like the mortar that was used and other things could cause more damage than benefit. I mean, there was a report done that identified some of those.
Well, if you looked at
Repairs.
the initial lease, the yacht club took that exterior responsibility on themselves. They were only responsible for the interior of the building, as a tenant. The town decided by not doing anything, it forced the yacht club to do things to the building which they were not authorized to do, which has caused us problems going forward. So, they were, and quite frankly, they were paying. I think the dues to be a member of the yacht club is $10 a year.
Yeah.
Right? So they would talk about doing things in the cheap, and it was causing some serious potentially, fire issues and health issues in that building. So I guess I don't even know what to say about this. I think that most of the buildings, I mean, this building here is as people have said, it's a functional box. I mean, this building will probably in the next 10 years be insufficient, and that will tie into the whole town center discussion that we have, because they'll have to do something with this building because it doesn't work. For what we want a municipal building to deal with, so. More to come on that one, but I think that, as long as people understand that this is important to people. And the town does have a responsibility. I think unfortunately what's coming out of this is you're gonna be putting down a lot of people that are saying, you have responsibility for this, but you haven't done your job. And I think I want to be a little sensitive to that, so we don't get tremendous amount of pushback from people that we really need their cooperation from to enact these
All right.
recommendations.
I think we want to highlight the accomplishments. I mean, obviously, one of the things that we said that we needed to do was to say where things needed to continue, more progress needed to be made. Which
Right.
we wanted to make sure that we made those recommendations, but I also think we should highlight the progress.
Yeah.
So.
Or the lack thereof
Yeah.
in reasonable ways, right?
Yeah. Because, considering what our charges, I think there's been some significant accomplishments. Unfortunately, like we were talking earlier about the traffic mitigation plan, if it's not implemented, this is where the sort of rubber hits the road here. That's why I stopped being a planner a long time ago, because you were planning things that were never taken to the next level. You don't mind someone saying, no, I don't want to do it, but to ignore the issue, I think that's what sort of, becomes a bigger issue, as we're seeing economic development in East Milton Square. I mean, you lost a ton of parking behind Abbey Park, and now you're seeing people double and triple park. And so what just came out recently is they want to change the penalties for double parking in East Milton parking in handicap zones by fourfold, right? So they think that's gonna solve the problem, but it only solves the problem if there's someone there to give them the ticket. So they haven't really done that, right? So when people are down there doing, Uber Eats, picking up food as they do in those restaurants, which some people think is great for the vitality of East Milton Square and money. But if there's if you don't see a policeman down there to give out a ticket, you could say, I'm gonna charge you $10,000 for double parking, but you're not gonna think, so it's not gonna stop, right? So I think that those are the types of things we're trying to get, not one group, as I'm trying to do before about East Milton, get 5 or 6 people, all the stakeholders in the room and say, okay, we're not gonna leave this room until we identify the problems and come up with step-by-step solutions and responsibility to do those things. And that's, I think, what we're trying to get at. Now, we can do it, we can put it in there saying, hey, this is your responsibility, and you haven't done it. Is there another way for us to get something done without putting someone on the spot, making them feel feeling guilty or being picked on by us? I'm not sure what it gets us, right?
I think we definitely need to highlight where there's progress and where there's not been progress. And we just need to say that the plan identified these entities as the responsible parties. We don't have to make any commentary,
Okay.
Right.
I think we can say that it hasn't been, as far as whether there should be future attention paid on something, I think we can offer commentary based on our experience on the committee and our experience on other committees, like, or boards like planning board, right? So, but like, I don't think that I should put any commentary or sort of excuses for things that the planning board hasn't done. I just will note that it hasn't been done.
Hasn't been done. I mean,
You know?
Right, and that's factual as opposed to
Yeah.
judgmental, and I
Right.
think as long as we
and
stay in the realm
that's
of,
gonna come out loud and clear, which is, one of the unintended consequences when we started talking about this years ago. We would have thought that some of these recommendations would be acted on by the select board because of the way we were set up. As I said earlier, with when someone said to me on this traffic committee that I want the responsibility, I want to be the person who's gonna implement it as a town employee. And then all of a sudden they have it and they don't do what they said they wanted to do because they were nervous that someone else was going to be an extra layer on top of them saying, here, this is what you should do, right? So I think that's where these things get a little complicated. And I think one of the best things that's gonna come out of this is that a lot of effort by a lot of people went into this report and we did get some things done, right? There's been some great successes, but there's a lot that we spent time on and talked about and people identified. And I think a lot of these things will then also be re-identified the next master plan that say, hey, why participate in the process if it really isn't gonna get done? And everyone can say, oh, till you're blue in the face, oh, this is be different. And how is it gonna be different? Is the select board going to buy into this and say, hey, we'll take this seriously? I think that's a conversation that you probably could have with Ben or with someone on the select board saying, hey, this is what's coming out here, fellas, how do you want that?
Remember, it's planning board and select board who
Well, both.
adopt.
I talked to Meredith too.
Yeah.
He said, this is gonna be a situation, it's gonna be, we're doing our job and identifying these issues. But you know what? There's so many that nothing has happened on. Right? I mean, I would not go through all 20 now, but I'm guessing there's 12 of them, more than 50%, that really needs some sort of action one way or another.
So one thing I guess I could say, like, just thinking about organization. So like if we said here, like accomplish right underneath this. Can't spell. Further
Further step,
effort.
further effort.
Right, and so it can split up, split up what's here.
Yeah.
Into those two and make that for all 12. So it's really clear. Somebody can look at it and say, that's done. This needs more work, right?
Well, what the good thing that's gonna come out of this, hopefully, if anybody ever reads it, besides the select board, is they're gonna say, gee, why haven't these things been done? Is there some sort of a systematic organizational flaw in the process that we have, where good ideas that have been studied has been asked by the town, and then people just say, well, we're just not gonna deal with it. I mean, that's, this is what gets people frustrated, and it really retards the ability to attract people to sit in committees. Because you just don't wanna waste your time.
Okay, so we think this is a way to make that clear.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I
Kinda think
that
about it
people
throughout.
understand that, I don't think, we finished this up, and, when you take it to the planning board, you take it to the select board, we can go with you, you go by yourself. Just say, listen, to read this and take a look at it, everybody's gonna go, well, it makes it look like we're not doing our job either. And I'm saying, well, that's not I don't wanna ruin your day here, but this is what this is what we were supposed to do, and this is what you decided not to do for whatever reason. Right?
Some of them might even not realize that that's what they were supposed to do. Yeah,
Exactly. I would imagine that a number of people on the select board, maybe some people on the planning board, basically said, oh, we didn't know we were supposed to act on this, that this was important. We have our own agenda, and we're saying, wait a minute, your agenda is fine, but there are a lot of people who put together an agenda for you that you've decided to ignore.
well, that's the thing, the master plan itself really, if adopted by the select board and the planning board, if you read about like, it says that what you should do is, this is the guide, the plan is the guide for the things that you do. So like for the planning board, it should be the things that are recommended that are zoning initiatives. The planning board should be having this out and making its own assessments about how they're progressing. Exactly,
And then-
yeah.
But once again, it forces them, as I said earlier, I said, to decide, yes, we agree that this is important and we're gonna work on it. No, we disagree and we're not going to work on it, or we're just not gonna do it now,
Yeah.
right? But it's gonna force people to shorten that decision tree, and ignoring the issues isn't a good answer. Especially since they're elected by the people who participated putting together the this isn't our master plan. Right? All the meetings we went to when we first started, all over the place, and getting people in these small groups and putting
Stickers
on things and all this other junk that went along with it. They said, this isn't mine or Cheryl's or yours, Regina. This is from the people who live in the town or did live in the town, and said, we think this is important, and you people have just ignored it. You don't, basically saying, we don't care what you think is important. We think what we're talking about is more important. And I think that's fair on their part to say, we don't care. No one's gonna say that, by the way.
Preach, Mr. Burke, preach.
But I think you wanna put some people having a look at each other saying, wait a minute, we look like we didn't do our job.
Well, we want to call attention to that, this plan has been out there, there's been recommendations, there's been progress, there's more work that needs to be done, and it needs an update in some areas,
That's
right?
right. Yeah. I think there's, you put together another list, it'd probably be a half a dozen, probably half of the things we're talking about will still be on the list, but it would be replaced by 10 other issues.
So, given we're getting close to 9, I
Yeah.
think we did a good job covering, that part of it. So Tabor had provided this, which I only briefly looked at on the historic and cultural. So, and I know he had said he wanted to review it. I don't know what happened to he and Megan, because they both said they could come tonight, and I don't have any messages from them. And I checked the calendar invite and they're on it, so I hope there wasn't some. Yeah, and they both said that, confirmed that they were coming, so I don't know what happened. Maybe some confusion with the login in the beginning, and they didn't stay with us long enough.
But both really wanted this meeting.
So I guess let me, I'm gonna go a little out and just scroll through quickly. So what we had, well, a little bit closer. So the beginning of the way we were, I think Regina, you had kind of helped think about how to format with, you know, the section, the kind of overview, the challenges, and I thought the accomplishments. So you had worked on this, the open space and recreation. And I think what we were gonna do is not include the detailed from the spreadsheet, but find a way to do the summary, right? And then on economic development, I had kind of taken that I think formatting or approach, Regina, to put this together and put what was achieved and what the challenges remain. They could be, instead of challenges, we could call them challenges and, you know, lack of progress or whatever we want to call it. And then recommendations. So the question is, do we want the recommendations? There were a lot of things that weren't accomplished in that plan, and I think they're all good still. So I think everybody needs to read them and kind of think about that.
Yeah.
And say,
Right.
do we still want to make these recommendations? And then I think we have to decide if this is where we're going to want them. Like, are the recommendations going to fall under each section, or are they going to be something pulled out separately? But I kind of think if you're interested in economic development, it's nice to have everything in that section. Or if you're interested in housing or circulation, et cetera.
Right.
So, you know, like this economic development is 2 pages. So if we have, I know Megan mentioned the length last time. So if each of these sections is 2 pages, then we have, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, was it? 6 sections, that's 12 pages there, right?
Mhm.
And how much, let's see, the introduction is 3, 4, and then, so 4, and then on this was 5. So 9 and 12, 21, and then we still had the changing conditions. Now, I think the changing conditions could probably be like a half a page each. Let me go down to see, I started on those. Oops. All right, so you have to look at that. I would like for you to work on this section, Regina.
Okay.
DEI.
Mhm.
Some of this just I pulled from the meeting minutes just to get a start, you know, it can be edited down. And then, you know,
And this is the one I was gonna talk to Pat and Chris about. Pat,
I think the
yeah.
select board adopted a policy. I don't know exactly what that policy is.
Okay.
And I know the committee's kind of getting it was definitely reformulated or sort of repopulated, and it's working. So if you could take a look at that. The Climate Action Planning Committee is working away. And I think they're going to have a lot of recommendations in it. So I'm not, I think it's going to be interesting to see whether that's going to cover pretty comprehensively what would fall under this category. So it's almost like we would refer to that report and its recommendations almost. But I do think, you know, we did have some good input from them, from Sustainable Milton, Shade Tree Advisory Committee, et cetera. And then I added this about the MBTA zoning. I think we talked about this, adding this section on the CPC and overrides, and then on COVID. So that would put us, I lost track how many pages we were, but let's just say it was like 30 pages. That seems like too many. But
That's it?
does it for as much as it is?
For-
I mean, considering this is the plan, right?
Yeah.
Well, how long was the plan,
Yeah, a lot. It's 3 volumes, right?
right? So I don't think that's unreasonable, but
Okay.
but I also don't have the perspective of municipal stuff, right? But honestly, if you're talking about a 10-year plan, you
It's a
know,
lot of topics, a lot of
it's a
topics.
lot of topics. So
Yeah.
I do not, I would have thought we would have even we might have even topped that. So if we have a 30-page actual plan, right? And then if we need images or an index or something like that, I think the max we'll get to is maybe 50, and that's not reading. That's just, formatting and what have you. I think that's reasonable.
All right, so we have I was thinking we wouldn't go into any more detail tonight since it's 9 o'clock.
Right.
You guys agree with that?
I agree.
I'm just thinking about in terms of the length of this, I don't think there's any real hard and fast good number. I'm just wondering,
Okay.
will anyone read it?
Well, I don't know if it's meant to be read from cover to cover by everyone that touches it, but focusing in on economic, focusing in on what applies to the planning board, I think in that way it can be a useful tool. But it's a multi-tool, right? And so you're not going to use everyone is not going to use every prong of a multi-tool, right?
No, I'm wondering who's gonna read it at all.
Well, I think we need to think about some overarching, like if we make a presentation to the select board, the planning board, and to town meeting, we're going to need that kind of overarching synopsis. We're not gonna go through this report for
No,
that.
we're gonna have to have a Reader's Digest
Yeah.
version for some of these people. I'm just thinking about some of the people I think on some, the planning board, on the select board. In terms of how they operate, how much time are they gonna really spend on reading this at all? I mean, I could talk to some of the people I know right now who wouldn't have a clue what's in the master plan at all. And then
Right.
all of a sudden, we're gonna give them something, here's a final project. So I'm almost thinking if we could have, it could be 100 pages, as long as we could get together some sort of Reader's Digest version. That you could make a presentation to at town meeting or to the Board of Selectmen. They're not gonna sit down there and let us go through,
No, and I hate when presentations are a reading of slides, right? Like I
Right.
absolutely think that we do a well-crafted, not even point by point, because as you saw that one point, was it point 13? But it was about maybe increasing access to the ponds, something like that. Like I don't think we would include that in a high level recommendation list. But we hit the highlights that are talked about in the introduction show put out, and really focus in on the challenges that are, like, even though there are things specified for each committee, we don't know that each of the committees knows that that's their responsibility, not only because of turnover, but because this hasn't necessarily been revisited or subsumed into the charge of each of these committees. So I think identifying that as a major obstacle is important, and to say, like, if we do not solve that problem, then making a master plan has limited power, limited feasibility.
All right, so if we could knock out like this at level of the report, then we can spend a little time hitting the high points we want to make, in the presentations. And I think we could put that in an executive summary somewhere in the beginning too.
Yeah,
or in a conclusion or something like that. Because some people
Yeah.
are gonna jump to the conclusion, like when I read technical reports, my
Yeah,
work,
there's a way to read them,
I
absolutely.
I look at the methods and then I jump to the conclusion and then I go back and see where I want the detail.
Yep. Yep,
So the
yep.
points for that, I just want to, if our goal is to basically put together a report, I think we have a good basis to do that right now. If part of our goal is to get some further action on this,
Bingo.
we have to think a little bit about this is what we accomplished, and this is what we need your attention on. If you agree that these issues are important, if you don't agree they're important, then just tell us they're not important and don't bother reading.
Mhm.
But if you do agree that traffic or economic development or climate change or whatever are important, or historic preservation are important, okay, these are the things that you have to do. Some people think we're supposed to do it. I have to tell people constantly,
Right,
Right,
that's not our job. It is not
right.
our charge. We recommend to the select board, and I don't think some people on the select board understand that.
No, no, I agree with you. I do think that part of our job then should be to be that reminder, right? And I know we've gone, have we gone every year, Cheryl? To
yes.
to like the select board? Yeah. Have we done the same thing with the planning board? It's been a dual meeting.
Yeah, it's because we were getting to this point of trying to summarize everything. I haven't done it like in
Oh, no, I get it.
the last year, but
Get
I have talked with Meredith about coming in September.
Mm-hmm.
And I sent a note to Nick Milano today about this getting on the select board agenda, and let me see, there's something else I sent him about. One sec.
Mm-hmm. Do we know if there's been any progress made on getting a new town planner?
I haven't asked in the last
Okay.
month and a half or so. I did ask, and he had a couple of candidates who were short on the qualifications.
Got it.
I was asking him actually for the actual end date of our committee. Because I know it's like fall town meeting, but I don't know if there's an exact date. The town meeting is October 27th, and I'll ask that I can make a presentation for town meeting. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping that we have up and through October, because if we need it, we could use October to present to the planning board and select board if we don't have it by September. August 4th, our next meeting, that Monday, I'm thinking that I will need to be on Zoom.
If I'm gonna attend, I'm gonna have to be on Zoom, so.
Okay, so let's just make it an all Zoom, and then I can still learn how to do this hybrid.
Okay, that sounds good.
Since I want
That's easy. That's easy.
I just think it's crazy we're not gonna have a town planner for
I
Friday. I mean, this is
I know, we have like,
mind boggling. There's something wrong here. We're not paying them enough money, or people don't wanna work here. There's something going on.
in fact, I reached out to a planning consultant who worked with us in East Milton, Judy Barrett.
Sure.
And I said, Judy, where can we advertise this position? And I sent her recommendations to Nick. And I don't know if he's followed up with that or not, but it just seems like she had a lot of recommendations, and I don't, in planning world, in the planning world place, that maybe he is or is not familiar with, but
Sort of an important position.
yes,
Close
yeah,
to us.
absolutely. So, if we all can do some more work on this, Dick, I think you said that you could work on the traffic.
I'll do the
right?
traffic piece, as I said, I just have to think this thing through a little bit, because what's gonna come out of it is not gonna be particularly flattering
Right,
to the town.
well, I think,
And I just, it's, do I wanna not pick a fight with someone, but it's very obvious, we had, 20 recommendations, very similar to this. 20 recommendations, of which none of them, not one, has been acted on.
This is for traffic?
Yeah,
so the other thing we should think about, Regina, is, can we have links in this document to like the town website for the traffic plan? I don't even know the website, but I know the bicycle pedestrian.
I think I
Yeah.
got the traffic mitigation plan, if it isn't on, it should be on.
It should be on here.
Mhm.
And people can take a look at it, and we had 20 meetings with the Mark Alba, who was now the deputy chief. We had Zulus, Jeff Mullen, Bill Clark, myself, 2 residents, Zawinski. I mean, it was like, at 7 o'clock in the morning, there was and we had consultants come in.
The report's really good,
Yeah,
actually. It's really,
everyone said it was a very nice report, and it's sitting on a shelf somewhere. Right, which is what I'm thinking, probably unfortunately will happen with this, but that's not the point. Point is, we will produce a deliverable. But I don't know, it gets frustrating on these things when you keep on saying, well, more action is required, and no one has even taken a look at it.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be a sliver of municipal life where you've got turnover that happens, and so people don't even know what has been going on, right? I wouldn't necessarily expect that our newest planning board members or newest select board members or newest planning board members would know about all that stuff unless there was sort of an onboarding process that introduced them to the things that are ongoing in the town, right?
So one
And
thing about
I
the
don't think,
planning-
I think with the turnover of our strong town administrator, with the turnover of the planning, the head of the, what am I trying to say? Oh my gosh. Our town planner, we lose a lot of that institutional knowledge, and there's no set way of passing that on to newly elected or appointed individuals, so.
Yeah, I mean, the planning board members are given a binder with the rules and regs and all sorts of stuff. And I don't know, since I received my binder so long ago, whether the plan is included in the binder. But
Right.
this is a binder that has all 3 volumes in it. So this is a binder by itself. And
And that's not given to planning board members.
no.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it's on the town website and it's available, but, I think, that's something that early on we spoke about is there buy-in at all levels of government that are responsible for implementation?
Yeah.
And I think, when we did some of our initial outreach, probably was the first time some of those folks had heard about it, right?
Yeah.
Well, but, they're, obviously the Partnership for a Healthy Milton referenced the master plan and the shuttle, right? So,
Somebody's reading.
so yeah, the libraries are well aware of in their plan to address their parking needs and programming. So, there are some who have found it, and there are some who have referenced it, like the memory care when their proposal came to the planning board. And that's the way it should be, it should be sometimes like on the planning board, I'll say, is this consistent with our plan? Because that's what you need to ask. That's what the planning department needs to ask. That's
Every time, yes.
needs to
Yes.
ask. And even with, zoning articles, but
You're right, I mean, I think I asked recently, and not gonna use names, I said, what is the traffic plan for the town of Milton? So we don't have it. Okay. What do we have a plan for? We have a parking plan. Well, we don't have a parking plan either. Okay. You know, as we get into these things, what's the economic development plan? We don't have one. So what do we have plans for? And I think what we're identifying is, this is what people want the town to deal with. And the town can say, and I think I'm not quite as quick to give them a pass, saying, oh, we didn't know about it and no one brought it to our attention. Because there has been some continuity on some of the board, basically saying, hey, we're telling you, this is important. We recommended this. What have you done?
Right.
Right? And they say, well, we've done nothing, and then whatever, you don't understand, this happened, so we had to focus on this. But the things that we're supposed to do. You know, they're supposed to do, I think, by appointing us to this board, this committee, was they asked us for our recommendations. We give them the recommendation. They don't say no, they just ignore them. Right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, part of it is if some of them disagree with it, but the reality is, it's a plan, like, you know, plans outlive the composition of particular boards. So if that body adopted that plan, the new members should be bound to the plan that the prior board adopted, right? So that should be some continuity that
It's
way.
like the Constitution, you put together a plan and then you forward, you don't say, I'm gonna ignore it, right? If you have a plan, or you just say, listen, we have to do a master plan, we don't care what's in there, we don't care what you think, we're gonna do something else, right? That's fair. I wouldn't like it, but I said that's fair for them to say that. So I think we go to, and almost like before we actually put this in final version, sit down with some of the people and say, listen, I'm just gonna let you know, this thing may not be particularly pretty, you understand what this is gonna look like, if someone does read it. Right?
Well, we're gonna highlight certain things, so we have to decide what we wanna highlight.
Right, I mean, I think it's, you know, and they're gonna say, well, you know, we haven't had a planner. Just read, they'll hike, I tell you what's gonna happen, they'll say, we haven't dealt with this because we don't have anybody in the planning department right now.
Yeah, well, that's,
All right, I mean, that's, you know what I'm saying, come on. We haven't followed that, but we don't have a town engineer, we haven't followed it because we couldn't get together, you know, bought the Chamber of Commerce. East Milton Chamber of Commerce. Does anyone go to those meetings from the town? Not anymore,
Tim used to, yeah.
not very often.
He would go
Proctor's-
he used to go
Proctor's-
quarterly. Tim would go
But
quarterly.
that was, I would get a free lunch, but that was.
Stop, Dick.
I've been telling you, I went to them, and I said, you know, and that's why most of the people went, because Vance Welsh would give them a free lunch. But I think the idea of that was a pretty good forum to get them in the room saying, hey, this is what I want you to do. We want you to make sure you're picking up the trash. We want to make sure, let's figure out some sort of a parking plan or a traffic plan. Are we going to traffic enforcement?
So what I would say, Dick, is pull out of that, that
I will.
report, and if you can send it to us so we can all read it before the 4th.
I'll try to.
You don't have to plug it into the document. If you want to just send it in email or Word, I can plug it into the document if you want.
Okay.
And then, Regina, I think you said that you had some time, to work on things, right?
This week,
So
absolutely.
if you have time to do a read of all of it and
Okay.
just say, and I'm happy for you just to,
Put the comments on the side.
well, I mean, if we wanna, do it where we're tracking changes or not, I'm not,
Okay.
that's not critical to me. But if you wanna rewrite an entire section, just keep that section that's there, put a new paragraph below it or something
Got
like
it.
that, and say
Got
this
it.
is
Okay.
intended to replace the paragraph above, just so we
Yep.
don't lose it. So either redline it or do it that way.
Okay.
And, yeah, as far as you can get with it, that would be terrific.
Okay.
And I'll see what I can continue to do to work in the document.
One thing I
Thank you.
find interesting in terms of just traffic, I'm trying to get this validated, but I did sort of an informal survey looking at the Milton record for the past, 3 or 4 months. We average in the town between 20 and 25 motor vehicle accidents a week.
Hmm.
Week. 1,000 a year in the town of Milton.
Well, we obviously have the state roadways,
Oh, no, well,
This
the
is-
state roadway,
but
I don't
this is
mean
not
expressway.
counting those.
No,
It's not like Randolph Ave.
Well, I would count all of
Okay.
them, but I'm saying it doesn't count the expressway.
No.
So we're talking 25 a week,
Hmm.
right? 1,000 a year.
I tell you what, there's just way too much distracted driving, but
Whatever it is, but think about the manpower, not only the accident, but the manpower having the police there just dealing with those types of issues. Right? And so when someone tells me, and I ask this question, why don't we have a traffic plan? They said we don't need one.
well, we don't have traffic and parking enforcement much, right?
No,
Like
it's fine.
speed limits and
We have
other
people
stuff.
going through red lights, we have people going through stop signs, we have, well, we just saw, some of the things that can happen, and none of them are particularly good. And I think that, forcing people to come down Randolph Avenue in the morning, cutting down Pleasant Street by 2 elementary schools, so people can get to East Milton Square, is one of the most bizarre things I've ever heard in my entire life, and that's been encouraged.
Hmm.
Really?
Yes.
By whom?
By the town, we tried to get, Brian Walsh and I tried to get, do not enter Pleasant Street
Oh,
between
yeah.
7 and 9 in the morning, which would then force people to stay on Randolph Avenue.
Right.
And back the traffic up to wherever it's going, so people, when they go on Waze,
Yeah,
they wouldn't say, hey, I can come down Randolph Avenue, and that's gonna be sort of tied up, but I can take off through Pleasant Street, go down to East Milton Square and pick up the expressway in Granite Avenue. Well, that causes a problem for us in the square and on Granite Avenue, if you ever try to go in town in the morning, some mornings, and all of a sudden the traffic is backed up to Squantum Street, and you say to yourself, so I asked someone, and they said, well, what we tried to do is try to get people through Milton as fast as possible. I said, are you serious?
that's a real problem for people who live on those streets.
You can't
Can't
get out
get
the
in and out of
street.
here, yeah.
And you wanna talk about economic development, you wanna talk about
Yeah.
people saying, we wanna put housing on these streets, and people can't. I wanna see the people at 7-Eleven Randolph Avenue, when they wanna take a left to go, come out of that driveway, to take a left to go down to St. Elizabeth's Church. I wanna see how that works out for them without a stop sign in the morning. That will be an absolute disaster, right?
Randolph Ave, I think I remember you telling me this about traffic moving through Milton, because I say it all the time, the state, the roadways are a big problem. The sidewalks are right next to cars going too fast. There's no safe way to walk or bike. And, the cars are going too fast.
Sorry, guys. Duty calls. I do have to run.
All right, so,
Yeah.
all right, so we will, call our working session.
Yeah.
I'll take a motion to adjourn, Dick.
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
And a second from you, Regina?
Second.
All right, and all those in favor, I guess we'll have to do our roll call. Regina?
Aye.
Dick?
Yes,
And myself, yes. All right, thanks, guys.
all right.
See
Thank
you
you.
in the
Bye,
third.
guys.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye.